I want you to think back 100 years ago. How life was back then. No iPhones, no internet, no TV, and no video games. Movies had only been around for about 17 years and there was no sound whatsoever. People were leaving an old age of superstition and moving into a modern age of science. Movies were on their last leg of creating silent fantasies before the First World War. This is one of those films. I'm talking about The Student of Prague, and this September, 100 years ago, it was released, and it's one of the few films of director-writer-actor Paul Wegener to survive after all these years. Wegener was most famous for playing the Golem in his famous and partly lost Golem trilogy. But this predates the first Golem movie by 2 years, and it also happens to be Wegener's second film. It's also based off an Edgar Allan Poe short story, William Wilson. This movie for the longest time was considered the first horror film ever made, but in recent years, earlier horror films have been discovered like Thomas Edison's Frankenstein and George Méliès's House of the Devil. But this has been confirmed that it is the first feature-length horror film, as in it's the first horror film to be longer than an hour. You see, it's about a student by the name of Baldin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. He's the best fencer in the whole school. One day he saves a countess and immediately becomes romantically obsessed with her. Unfortunately, Baldin is penniless and has no means of doing anything else besides fence. The day after he saves her, a man agrees to give him a bag full of endless money in exchange for anything he chooses. Baldin agrees, and the man extracts his reflection out of the mirror. It's said that the movie's original runtime was an hour and 20 minutes, but all that exists is 41 minutes. It's an interesting piece of early horror and is fascinating to watch if you're wondering what scared people back then. This film was actually remade 13 years later as The Student of Prague, and it starred Conrad Veidt as the student. As usual, the remake is not as good as the original. It's an original concept and an underrated classic. The gloomy atmosphere only enhances the movie, in my opinion. The film at certain times resembles German Expressionism, but I use the word resembles loosely. The scene with the two Baldins is great because it's done so well and at times is really creepy. That's the first term that pops into my head when I think of this movie. Creepy. It's genuinely creepy and has a chilling atmosphere that has been imitated several times to this day. The film is easily attainable. It's available from Alpha Video for about $5. You can get it off of Amazon or Alpha Video's website, oldies.com. On their site, they also sell other silent and sound classics. The DVDs aren't as good as quality as Kino or the Criterion Collection, though, so when you buy one, be warned, there's a 50-50 chance you could get really bad quality. Think about how far we've come visually in the last 100 years. We went from this to this. Who knows how much more advanced we'll get in the next 100 years.